Most CS2 players are still using default settings, and that's a huge mistake. In this video I'll show you the best settings for maximum FPS without killing visual clarity, how to set up a perfect radar, crosshair, grenade beans and other settings that actually matter. This is not about resolution and sensitivity, those are personal preference. These are settings that every CS2 player should change to get real advantage in game. If you want to prove in CS2 and climb your ratings, these settings are mandatory. And if you play just for fun, spend 5 minutes on this and you already be better than 99% of chill players. You're on Abropix channel, let's go! In CS2 there are 4 main settings tabs. We'll go through each one and change only what actually matters, because about 80% of settings don't really affect your gameplay. If I don't talk about some settings, it means they are unimportant and can be left as default. Let's start with video tab. This action depends mostly on your PC performance and personal comfort. One setting that should always be enabled is display mode set to full screen, because it gives you the lowest input lag and best performance. Aspect ratio is personal preference. If you want a more stretched image that can make enemies easier to hit, choose 4:3. If you prefer a wider field of view, go with 16:9. Resolution depends on how powerful your PC is. If your computer is strong enough, you don't have to stick to very low resolution like 1280 by 960 4:3 or 1280 720 16:9. We still want to enjoy the game, and the super pixelated image is not fun to play on. We are using a 24.5-inch Asus ROG Strix 6G259 QNS, and after testing, 1440 by 1080 4:3 feels like the perfect balance between image clarity and performance for us. Refresh rate depends directly on your monitor. Always set it to maximum available value for the smoothest and fastest gameplay. Brightness is also personal preference. We personally use 100%, but you should choose what feels comfortable for your eyes. Now let's move to the most important graphics settings, the advanced video tab. Boost player contrast should always be enabled. This settings makes enemies stand out from the background much more clearly, helps your eyes spot players faster and allows you to react and kill quicker. VSync is completely useless in CS2, so turn it off. It only adds input lag and provides no real benefit. And video reflex low latency falls into the same category and should also be turned off. Now about max FPS. There is no point to setting a very high FPS if your PC can't hold it consistently. If your system can stay about 200 FPS without drops, you can set it higher, but if your FPS jumps between value like 150 and 200, it's better to cap it somewhere in the middle, around 170. It lets you to avoid stutters and unstable frame pacing. Next are the most important settings that define the balance between image clarity and preference. To get good FPS while keeping the image clean and readable, use the following options. Multisampling anti-aliasing mode should not be set to none. Use at least 2x MSA if your PC allows it. This removes jagged edges on player models and prevent them from blending into the background. Global shadow quality should be set to low. Higher value only waste FPS and give no competitive advantage. Dynamic shadows should be set to all. This is extremely important because it allows you to see enemy shadows not only from sunlight but also from artificial light sources. Model and texture detail should be set to low, as higher settings do not provide any real benefit in competitive play. Texture filter mode should be set to bilinear, because this option has minimal impact on FPS while still keeping the image sharp enough. Shader detail should be set to low, and particle detail should also be set to low. Both of these settings significantly affects FPS without improving gameplay. Ambient occlusion should be disabled, as it only hurts performance. High dynamic range should be set to quality if your FPS is stable and your PC is strong. If you are playing on weaker system, performance is better choice. Finally, Fidelity FX Super Resolution should be disabled and set to highest quality. Any other option reduces image quality at long distance, making enemies harder to see, which is bad for competitive play. Now let's talk about most important audio settings. Sound in CS2 is one of the biggest sources of information. If your audio settings are wrong, you might hear an enemy but not understand where he is or hear him too late. That's critical information that can easily decide an entire round. These are only audio settings you actually need. EQ profile should be set to crisp. This profile makes all important sounds more clearer, especially enemy footsteps, which is exactly what we want in competitive play. Left-right isolation should be set to around 70%. This helps you clearly hear footsteps and understand how far the enemy is from you. Below 50% the effect is barely noticeable, and about 80% the sound becomes too sharp and unnatural, making distance harder to judge. Perspective correction should be set to yes. If this option is disabled, sounds are split very strictly into front, back, left and right. Enabling it helps you much more accurately understand where sounds are coming from, like which side the bomb is being diffused from the inside a smoke or where an enemy is speaking from. Now let's move to music settings. Almost all options are useless and should be turned off, so nothing distracts you during a round. However, there is one setting that gives you a huge advantage. That setting is 10 seconds warning volume. This is the music that starts playing when there are 10 seconds left before the bomb explodes. This is extremely useful during city retakes. Defusing the bomb without a kit takes 8 seconds, so when you hear the music start, you instantly know you have about 2 seconds to decide wherever to come into the defuse or save your weapon. Set this volume at around 15–20% so you can clearly hear it without it covering up the important sound during the retake. Now let's move to the game tab. First of all, change max acceptable game traffic bandwidth to unrestricted if you have a good internet connection around 50 Mbps or higher. This removes network limitation and helps avoid issue without data transfer during the game. Buffering to smooth over packet loss is not needed. Turn it off. This option can add delay and doesn't help in stable connections. Install Counter-Strike Workshop tool should be set to no unless you specifically need them. If you have the option CPU cores usage preference, set it to performance cores only. This helps the game prioritize the fastest cores on modern CPUs. Now let's move to HUD settings. Here I strongly recommend setting large player HUD to yes. This removes players' avatars during the round and shows you only the number of players alive on each team. Now let's move to the communication tab. Here set allow animated avatars to no. Animated avatars add unnecessary load and provide zero competitive value. Next is item tab. To avoid situation where you try to shoot an enemy but instead remove the silencer from your weapon, disable detach silencer on M4A1S and use S. This prevents very annoying and completely avoidable mistakes. And here enable first person tracers. This allows you to see the yellow bullet tracers more clearly, making it easier to understand where your bullets are going. It's very helpful for spray control and adjusting your aim in real life. Now let's talk about radar settings. This is extremely important. Most players still use the default radar and honestly is terrible. A properly configured radar gives you better information and faster reaction, which can easily win you rounds. The default radar doesn't show the full map, doesn't help you orient inside smoke, and because of that you lose information, advantage and rounds. If you want clear and reliable information, there are the radar settings you should use. Set radar centers the players to no. This way allows you to see the whole map instead of just a small area around your character. Set radar is rotating to yes. A rotation radar helps you orient yourself much better, especially in situations with low visibility, like inside smokes. Set radar HUD map blends with background to yes. This makes the radar clear and easier to read. Set blur background to yes as well for the same reason, better clarity and focus on the map. Now let's move to the radar visual settings. Just copy the settings you see on the screen. They are perfect for seeing the whole map and staying oriented. Set toggle square shape with scoreboard to no. Set force square shape also to no. Finally, set radar is zooming dynamically to no. A static zoom gives you consistent information at all times and prevents sudden changes that can confuse you in important moments. Now let's move to Crosshair settings. This is one of the most personal parts of CS2, but there are still a few basic rules everyone should follow. The most important one, never use dynamic crosshair. A dynamic crosshair removes almost all your advantage in duels. This is not Call of Duty, so always use classic static. Set follow recoil to no. You don't want your crosshair jumping around while spraying, it only makes aiming harder and more confusing. Now let's talk about crosshair types. Yes, this is still personal preference, but based on experience there are 3 main types from easiest to hardest, and depending on the crosshair you choose, shooting can actually feel easier or harder. The first and simplest type is classic crosshair with longer lines. For some reason it really helps with headshot, especially with pistols like Deagle. If you are a beginner player, I strongly recommend starting with this one and adjusting the line length to your liking. The second type is very popular pro style crosshair. It's a bit more precise and slightly harder to use, but many professional professional players prefer it, and it's what I personally play with. If this style feels comfortable to you, it's a really great option. The third time, which becoming more popular, and I honestly don't understand why, it's a dot crosshair. Square or circle, it doesn't matter. This is the hardest crosshair type according to most players, and I strongly do not recommend using it. Crosshair color is also important. Always choose a high contrast color that doesn't blend into the environment. I personally use red because it's brand color, but I can say it's the best option. Visibility always comes first. Now let's talk about grenade lineup reticle. I recommend disabling it for all grenades except smokes. This setting controls the range reticle that appears when you hold the grenade in your hand. For flashes and molotovs it's completely unnecessary and often just clutters your screen. But for smokes it can actually be useful, especially for specific or tricky lineups when you need to aim at the precise pixel. So the best option to keep it enabled only for smokes and turn it off for everything else. Damage prediction is an absolutely useless setting when you play online, and it will only get in your way. If it option is enabled, you can run into a situation where you see the animation of an enemy already being dead, while in reality he's still alive and ends up killing you. For online play, this settings gives you false information, which is the worst thing you can have in CS2. Turn everything related to level prediction off. Now let's move to keyboard and mouse settings. This part might hurt a bit, but if you want to climb in CS2, you have to do this. We are talking about grenade binds. Using 1K to switch between grenades creates a lot of problems. It slows you down, makes you pull out the wrong grenade under pressure, and makes it harder to drop the correct utility to a teammate in tense situations. While you're scrolling to find the right grenade, the K moment is already lost. Here's the truth. Getting used to grenade binds takes about 1 week. Yes, at first it will feel uncomfortable and your old habit might seem faster, but after 10 games you'll thank me, the difference is massive. Grenade binds are personal, but I'll show you my setup, which is also used by many pro players. You see it on your screen. These are extremely comfortable binds that gives you a huge in-game advantage. So with these settings you are fully ready to dominate in CS2. If you want more useful video like this, drop plus in the comments. This was Bropix, see you on the FACEIT, bye bye.